Welcome to the Property Buyble. This show was created for current property owners, people looking to purchase property, and for professionals in the industry. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the Property Buyble. My name is Kim Ackerman. I'm a buyer's agent from Trelease Associates here in Sydney. Now, today I want to talk to you about how to choose a property manager as well as the property management of that investment property. You know, when you first buy an investment property, one of the next big decisions you're going to have to make is who is going to manage my property and what are the kind of conditions I want these properties to be managed in. So today, to help me discuss this topic, I have Jianna Lidis. You are our head of property management at Trelease Associates and also our BDM, our business development manager. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right. So one of the reasons why I chose this topic, I have had the worst of the worst property managers and gone through some really awful experiences. And had I known some of those things ahead of time, I think it would have helped me to have chosen the right people for those roles. So I guess just to kick people off, if we're talking about choosing a property manager and how to spot those things, where do we even start? If you've just bought an investment property, where would you even start to look for a property manager?
Well, I think the best way, first of all, is referrals.
Yeah.
If you've got a friend who says, I've got the greatest property manager, get their name and number. That's absolutely the best because they've had the experience with that person.
Yeah.
If you don't have anyone like that you can ask, you can always have a look at Google reviews of your local agents, and you can see there, and they're rated as well.
Yeah.
There's
through like Rate My Agent, for example.
There's Rate My Agent, but you could go also on each individual agent's sites and have a look at the reviews. Just see how long they've been in business, what they've been doing, the sorts of properties they're renting. It will give you an idea.
And what are some, I guess, red flags or things that people should, keep a lookout for when they're talking to these property managers?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny, not necessarily the wow agent with the big fancy agency. That might not be the best. You'll see when you're talking, but to each person, if you can at least see two, if you don't have time to see more, but at least see two and get an idea of their personality, who they are, how long they've been doing this job. You don't want to be the first bunny off with some young person who has been employed. You don't want to be that landlord. And
so someone with experience.
Someone with experience, someone that can tell you the types of properties that they're managing. If you've got a house, a big, beautiful house, and they've only done units, that's not the person for you either.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to have that.
So
you don't want to be their
like.
first experience for that.
Of course. All right. And I guess some of the other things that I always see are things like bad communication, bad organisation, if they can't even get it together to return your phone calls.
Absolutely. If they're making any mistakes, if they make a mistake with your name or a mistake on the management agency agreement, that's a red flag.
That's a big one.
And if they're making mistakes with dates and what you need, that's another big red flag. If they get you confused perhaps with someone else, they don't have the experience to be able to ascertain who they're talking to each time.
For sure. And I guess some good things that people should look out for when they're trying to choose a property manager as well. What would some green flags be?
The opposite to all the red flags. Someone who understands you. Yeah. Someone who is an investor themselves or has invested in the past, so no one really green. Yep. That's really good. If you're interviewing an agent and they know the area and they know the rents they can achieve and the sort of people that they're going to get for your place.
And on that part about local, you just mentioned the market there and they have experience in the market. Do you feel as though if you were to find a really great property manager, for example, do you feel as though the local market knowledge is something that's important?
Very important.
Okay.
They need to know the best streets. They need to know the problems. If someone's bought an investment in one of the bad streets, they need to know how to market and handle that because you still need to get the tenants into there and at the best rent.
Very much so.
You have to service everybody. So that will really serve each landlord really well when they've got the local knowledge.
Okay. And something that I've always thought about is having those local property managers. I guess they'd also have access to local tenants or tenants that have just come through similar properties of theirs that could potentially be available for your properties as well.
Absolutely.
It's exactly like the sales space. You sell a property, buyers come off the end of that, and you can put them onto another property that you have as well. Do you do a lot of that in that space?
You might have an open.
Yeah.
And I've had a situation where, a landlord who takes care of his own property down the road has come to my open and has told me I've got a property down the road.
Yeah.
Well, I picked out one of the tenants from my open who wasn't taking my place, and we let that place too, and then we got the management and we've been taking care of that. So that's the sort of thing you have to listen out for. When he says, I've got a property down the road, you start asking questions.
Of course.
And then, you will be able to ascertain that, look, I've got this girl, Catherine. That's exactly what she's looking for. Can I hook you up? And it happened really quickly.
Yeah.
So he was ecstatic. He had no vacancy rate. That's another thing. You could ask your property manager, what are your vacancy rates? What's your history of vacancy? And if they say anything more than 2 weeks, cross them off the list.
Yeah.
They're not for you.
Especially in like the eastern suburb Sydney market, for example.
Yeah, in all markets, your objective as a landlord is minimal vacancy, great tenant, best possible rent.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you've got that vacancy, long vacancies in between, your property manager's not doing their job. Yeah.
And on that point, and it's probably something that I was hoping that we would talk about at the end of this episode, but going through the off-market rentals, which you kind of briefly touched on just then, I find that really interesting, and I don't think it's talked about enough that having a great property manager like yourself looking after a landlord's investment properties, when that landlord comes to you and says, I've got this property, I want you to put it on the market, find me a tenant, you being a good property manager should be going into your database, and do go into your database to instantly look at potentially loading or offloading this property off market before you even think about spending money.
That's true. You could have spoken to, a couple a week ago, a week and a half ago, maybe even 2, and you know that it's right for them because you remember. A good property manager will remember, and you could give them a call and say, I've got something that's just come up. They'll come and have a look, and then you're done.
Yeah.
How impressive is that to a
How
landlord?
often does that happen?
Happens quite a lot.
Really?
You're working it. It's like sales. You're working it. A property manager who's switched on to everything and is paying attention, and paying attention to the tenants that come through their opens. See what you can get out of everyone that's coming through. When I say get out of, help each person.
Yes, of
they
course.
might not like this place, but you might know that another one of your managements is coming up in a week, in 2 weeks. I've got something.
Pre-market.
If you can wait. They change their dates, pre-market,
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. But you have to be switched on. Those property managers, you don't want – that's another way to pick someone actually.
Yeah.
Go to a few opens.
Yeah.
See how they
interact with you as a tenant.
How they interact with you
100%.
as someone that's looking through, because the way they'll treat you is the way that they will work for you.
Yeah, and it's the way that they'll treat the tenants that come through your properties.
Absolutely.
100%.
It's a good way.
I've done a similar thing in the sales space for friends and family who are unsure about different agents in different areas, just walking through the property and giving them feedback on they didn't even speak to me. They didn't ask me any questions.
That's right.
It's the same sort of thing in the rental space. You're just dealing with a different type of method of acquiring that property or
red flags.
Occupying that property.
That's right.
Absolute red flags.
Yeah.
And I guess if we just shift over to the management of the actual property. So this part I really wanted to go into a bit more detail about, because we're talking about, when you first sign up with a property manager, you as the landlord will have so many options that you can choose from of how you want the property managed. Having someone like yourself in the space, you're going to manage the property the best to your ability, but that landlord's still going to have some choices to make about how they want it managed. So what are some of the choices that a landlord would make when you're going through, or what are some of the choices they can have when they're going through signing an agency agreement and telling that property manager how they want their property manager managed?
There is a number of ways, Kim, you're right. For example, I have some landlords that live very close to their investment property.
Yeah.
And they'll say, look, I just want you to find me a tenant, collect the rent, I'll pay the bills, water rate, council rate, strata.
That's a big one.
And, don't worry about that.
Yeah. So just to clarify that, I guess, a bit more, if people have strata, you've got council, water rates, all sorts of things, rather than paying it themselves each quarter or month or however long, get all those bills redirected to your property manager and have them manage all of that for you. Well, it's no extra cost as well.
No, it's no extra cost, and the property manager will do that for you.
Yeah.
They'll contact each entity and they'll do that for you.
Yes, amazing. All right. So that's a big one. I think another thing is the occurrence of payments the income of the property.
Yes.
So, people have the choice of choosing how often they get paid for their rental. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Some agents, that's another thing that you can consider. If your agent says absolutely not, it's at the end of the month, we'll collect the rent and then we give it to you on the 30th.
Yeah.
But you really want it on the 15th.
Yes.
You could find an agency that is flexible to do that. For example, we do that.
Yes.
We do that on the 15th. We even have a list of landlords on the 20th. And on the 30th.
Oh, that's
so
good.
We do special disbursements because it depends on mortgages and things like that. But we're flexible. The main point here is, are they flexible? Are they taking care of you?
Yeah. And it's what suits the landlord, right? I mean, you definitely have property managers that will only pay once a month, and that's fine. That's just how they function and how their company runs. However, I know with all of my investment properties, I like to get paid every fortnight, every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Because then that money is in my offset account as quick as possible.
Right.
And it's not sitting in the trust account necessarily. So it's good to ask those questions.
That's right. So that you go 15th and the 30th.
15th, 30th.
That's fine.
Every single month. But I think also the limit to repairs and maintenance. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
A limit? You can set a limit.
Yes.
For example, you, Kim, could tell your property manager, look, I'm really busy buying property for people. Mm-hmm. So anything under $350, please go ahead if you feel
something
it needs to be fixed.
Right.
Some people make that $500. When they get to trust you, they still, I think $500 is a really good limit.
Yeah. And I think trust is definitely one thing, like makes it so much less stressful having a property manager you trust. I definitely have property managers I trust now.
Great.
And it is a lot less stressful to go through that process.
Yes.
Outside of Sydney, of course. But when we go through that process and you're trusting someone, it's good to have that limit. If the tenant calls up and says, the oven broke or this broke and it needs to be repaired, or the air conditioning's down and it's 40 degrees outside, you've got to do those things urgently most of the time.
Yes.
But having those set limits, you could tell your property manager, I want $0 set limit.
Oh yeah, you can. I want to be called about everything.
That's me.
Yeah.
I want to be called about everything. And it's not about not trusting the property manager. For me, it's more about just having a say in what's getting purchased in case I already have that thing, or if I can contribute in some way, I will.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big thing for people to go through.
Yes.
The bills and frequency, which we definitely touched on, the inspection frequency.
Yes, and inspections is a very important thing, because one question that you need to ask is that included in the management fee that you're charging me? There are agencies out there that charge extra for inspections.
Yeah, for extra inspections? Okay.
No, extra money.
Oh, just
it's
for inspections
not included.
in general?
Yeah, it's not included in the management fee. That's
so what would be like
important.
A basic inspection period?
3 months.
3 months,
yeah.
Okay.
3 months after they move in.
Yep.
If they're a good agent, this is another thing that it's another one of those flags we're looking for. They should really inspect after 3 months, because after 3 months, tenants settled in, you know what they're going to live like in the house once you go and have a look. If they're good, they go on the good tenant list, and then you can put them 6 months.
Yeah.
and then 6 months up, every 6 months
That's a good
hereafter.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had some massive horror stories happen to my investment, like the worst of
When
the
they were
worst.
getting inspected?
The tenants,
Right.
like I've had like heavy vandalism where like police are involved and there's reports and like really bad stuff, like domestic violence, like all sorts of stuff have happened to some of my investment properties. So having the choice to tell your property manager, you know what, I've had a bad experience in the past. I might be a little bit scarred. I do want 3 monthly inspections just to give me that peace of mind. I guess it's important to just tell people you can choose if you want 3 months, 6 months. If you want less time, like, I don't know, 2 months maybe. It's a conversation to be had.
Yeah.
All right.
They should do it.
Well, they're all really good, helpful points. I think just to wrap everything up and to give people some tips that are outside the scope of what we just talked about, or when you are going through this process. One of the big ones that I know we talked about is when you first speak to somebody, a lot of the time you'll be speaking to like a BDM, a business development manager. They're in charge of helping bring business into the company, to sign up the landlord and to look after them during that process. But they're not always the people that are going to physically look after the management as well. I mean, you physically look after management, but you're also the BDM.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people get caught out in that because they don't realize, oh my God, this person was wonderful. They took care of me.
Yes.
Oh, but they're not looking after.
You never hear from them again.
Yeah, you never hear from them again.
That's right.
So,
very important question.
Yeah. Another thing is when you are choosing someone for the first time, you are reading through the fine print of your agency agreement with that property management.
That's right.
Check the termination period because often that's negotiable. The termination period might be 2-3 months on the agency agreement, which means if you're having an awful time with them and you no longer want them to be your property manager, you have to give them 2-3 months notice before they're no longer the property manager. I think 30 days is pretty reasonable.
30 days is the norm.
Yeah.
But you, again, Kim, you have a choice. You could say, as a landlord,
I want less.
Yeah, I want less.
Yeah. Which is fine.
You can do that.
But that's when you do that at the beginning.
Yeah, you do that at the beginning and you say, look, I want less. And you can be upfront with them and say, once I feel that, you know, you're doing a great job, we can change that if you wish.
Yeah.
But for right now, you know, I'd like to have that. You can put it at 0 days.
Yeah.
I can give you written notice that day. And that's another thing. Don't be afraid of changing managing agents.
Massive.
Very big.
Yes.
Everyone's scared. They stay with the bad horse because
comfortable.
they're comfortable.
But are they?
Are they?
This is the thing.
And then they fall into that idea that, oh, they're all the same. At least I know this one and I'll just keep calling and manage them.
Yeah, I've been through this narrative
that's
in my
right.
head so many times.
But that's when you start asking your friends again, oh, I really need a property manager.
Yeah.
Can someone recommend someone?
Yeah.
Oh, mine's really great.
Someone that they've seen in action, because really, unfortunately, you know, like most services, you don't really know what someone is like until you sign up with them. And then by then it's kind of too late.
Yes.
But going through that process, I had in my mind many years ago, oh my God, I need to wait until the lease is over and then I can
Yeah, that's a trap.
You can do whatever the hell you want.
Whenever you want.
Whenever you want. You just need to adhere to that termination period, which we just talked about, whether it's 30 days, 45 days, or whatever it might be.
Immediate.
If you are not happy and your property manager is not doing a great job and you want out and you want to move over, all you need to do is find that new person.
That's right.
Let them know. They will actually deal with your current property manager and fix the whole thing up. They'll do the handover, the file, they'll contact the tenant for you, and they'll make the whole process very easy. You know, out of courtesy, you can let your property manager know someone will be taking over, FYI, they'll be in contact. Other than that, it's really that easy.
That easy.
Yeah, you don't have to be at the end of a lease or anything like that. So that took me a while to learn over the years. And it's such a relief, especially if people aren't in a happy situation. Sounds like a relationship. If you're in a bad relationship, you need to get out.
Yes.
And people can just up and go.
That's right.
So I guess I just want to tell a little bit of a story of something that happened to me a while ago. I had a property manager for one of my rural investment properties that I have in rural New South Wales. And I think one of the tips to add here is try and choose someone who has the ability to think outside the square. It's such a loaded comment, right? Like,
Yes.
think outside the box. Like, it's very hard to measure something like that. But just to give everyone an example, I had this property manager and she contacted me one day and she said, look, your tenant, there's been a window that's broken. So can I get your insurance details so I can put in a claim? And I was like, hold on a second, like, rewind. How did this happen? Which window was it? What's the story? Like, and I just wanted some more information. She was like, oh, we just need to put in a claim. And I was like, can you just, and this tenant was notorious for breaking things, unfortunately.
Destructive.
Yes. And I said to her very delicately, just be really kind and go back to him and say to him, you know what? If you've accidentally done this, because I asked her to go and look at the property. I had to ask her to physically look at the property. And I said, is the window broken from the inside or the outside? Because that will determine whether it was a wind or a tree, which is what he was complaining it was. But it was actually broken from the inside out.
Right.
So I said, look, he's obviously done this and it's probably by accident, which is fine. But just very lightly go back to him and say, look, if this is an accident, it's totally fine. We just need to know, because if it was some other means, whether it's wind or someone trying to break in, we may have to get the police involved. And as soon as he heard that, he was like, it was me. I'm really sorry.
Right.
I didn't mean to. And I'm so sorry. I should have told you. And I said to her, all you had to do was like prod a little bit or do your own investigations.
That's right. Oh.
Not everyone will do that.
They should.
They should, 100%.
It goes down into your list of what are you looking for in a property manager.
Yes. But it takes time to learn that.
Yeah.
To learn what people's intentions are and how good they really are.
And their experience in detective work. That needed a little bit of detective work. Now, thankfully, you actually asked the question.
I just asked the question and pushed a little bit.
And you asked her to go and have a look, which means that your property manager that's not part of their normal.
She's no longer my property manager.
Yeah.
But at the time, people don't want to rock the boat. Now, here's the insurance details, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas I just said to her, just ask him. Like, I'm not trying to attack anyone.
No.
Just
Details.
find out what's gone on. And as soon as he owned up to it, we organised a glass person right away. He paid for it and it was done.
That's right.
Rather than me paying my insurance, the premium would have gone up. I would have had to pay excess on the claim, all that sort of thing. So
all those repercussions. And that's why it's so important to have a really good property manager, because a bad property manager costs you a lot.
They do.
Of money. And the scenario.
Short term and long term.
And the scenario you're describing is a lazy property manager. She's just heard broken window, okay, insurance, I'll just do it with the landlord, done.
So finding somebody that looks after a property like it's their own.
That's right.
My property manager that I have for one of my Western Sydney properties, he is just amazing, and he just will look after something like its own. He'll go to Bunnings and buy a piece of a tool if he needs to. Yeah, that's you.
That's
exactly.
Me.
And that's what you need. But it takes time to learn that. And sometimes you may not see these red flags or green flags at the beginning, but you will definitely see it, after that first inspection or in due time. And I think there's just one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is really interesting for me to learn. I always thought that, when someone's going through the rental process, if you have a bunch of tenants come and look at a property, just say that property is $1,100 a week, for example. It's $1,100 a week. But if a tenant wants to offer more, it's your job really to get the best price possible without any funny business.
Yes.
So one of the things you mentioned to me is, as long as there's transparency and honesty throughout this period, if someone wanted to offer $1,200, you could let the other people know, and they can offer $1,300 if they want. So you can have that kind of best and final type scenario, just like in the buying and selling process as well, which I found really interesting. I always thought they're not allowed to do that. but you are allowed to do it. It's just a matter of how you do it.
Absolutely.
And it depends what's more important to the landlord, right? Like because I've had such awful situations in the past, if someone had a really good reference but was maybe offering a little bit less, I'd probably take it.
That's right.
Just because of my experience.
That's right. So there's a lot of things to consider. There's what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
There's starting dates.
Yeah.
Someone might say, I'll offer you more, but I'm starting in 3 weeks. There's so many scenarios.
For sure.
But our job is to
get the best you can.
Get the best tenant at the best rent. A good property manager's job is the best tenant at the best rent for the landlord.
Amazing.
And take care of them.
Okay. Well, that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for coming in. I've loved having you here, and it's good to talk about these sorts of things, especially for people who, they might be buying their first investment property. They've never spoken or even thought about hiring a property manager. Just some things to think about. You never really know until you're in it. But knowing that it's very easy to get out of it, should you be unhappy or should they be managing it in a certain way? I think the important thing is to almost manage it yourself in a way by just understanding what your choices are throughout this process. So I hope that everyone listening today and watching has learnt something about how to choose a property manager and the management that they go through as well. So thank you, Jianna.
Thank you, Kim.
Join us on the next episode for the Property Buyble.